The Ford government has carried a bill that would give the province more power over real estate decisions for several provincial organizations, including the Ontario Science Centre. The Improving Real Estate Management Act is now before the Standing Committee, and if passed, the legislation would remove and/or modify an organization's realty authority. Some of the organizations listed include the Science Centre, Public Health Ontario, and the Royal Ontario Museum. For more on the proposed legislation and what it could mean for the province, we're joined live by Jennifer French, an NDP MPP for Oshawa. Jennifer, thank you for joining us this morning. Walk us through, for those who don't know, what this new bill and act are all about.
Well, you're asking the right question. I had the opportunity to speak to this legislation for an hour as the Ontario NDP critic for infrastructure. And it seems to be addressing a question that we don't quite understand. Like, we're not entirely sure what the government's ultimate goal in doing this is, but it brings a lot of our Ontario treasures under the Infrastructure Ontario umbrella. So it takes the real property, the real estate holdings, and brings it into under government control, essentially. And so some of them, it's like they've listed 11 different agencies and entities, and about 5 of them are under total control, and the others just have to get permission before they buy or sell real property. And so we're not entirely sure of the problem that this is meant to solve, but it does beg a few questions. So that's what I did last week, and I will put some of those questions again to the government during committee.
And Jennifer, walk us through some of those questions, because we've heard a lot about the Greenbelt scandal with the Ford government. So whenever there's something in the news about the land ownership and the province, people start to raise some eyebrows. So walk us through some of the possibilities that this bill might afford the government if it is passed.
Well, it's a matter of it being ultimately under the control of Infrastructure Ontario, which that's not my concern so much as it is Infrastructure Ontario acts as the middleman, right? And when we look at the Ontario Science Centre, we know that Infrastructure Ontario has in effect been the landlord there. And so when the government tells the story of the Science Centre, being in disrepair or not having the work done that it needs, well, that's because of the landlord, and that's because Infrastructure Ontario and the property management has been wanting. So now to take more of our treasures, some of them, the Royal Ontario Museum is on the list, the McMichael, to bring them closer to Infrastructure Ontario and ultimately private contractors to do management. We have questions, but we more have concerns, because when we see the 2017 report from the Auditor General, she didn't have anything reassuring to say about how these properties are all, are managed by the province. So I guess that's the question: is how can we be assured that there isn't nefarious purpose here, right? Because you raise the Greenbelt grab, no one trusts them anymore, and this isn't very clear on what the ultimate goal is. So they just talk about centralization, kind of putting all their eggs in one basket or whatnot. But it remains to be seen, and hopefully there will not be harm caused from this. But who trusts them?
Mm-hmm. What's the reaction been? I don't know, Jennifer, if you've been speaking to any representatives with the Science Centre, the ROM, or any of the other organizations. You mentioned the Art Gallery as well, or community advocates about this legislation and their potential fears or thoughts on the matter.
Well, with this bill, as with others, things have moved really quickly. So this bill was tabled, then it went through debate, and now it's already being called to committee. And I'll tell you what the government themselves told me at the briefing. So the bureaucrats and the staffers who've been working on this legislation did explain that stakeholders, some of them feel this aligns with, with what their plans are, and others are wondering how this is going to affect them. And so we'll be waiting to hear from them to know what impact it's going to have on them. But certainly the very vocal advocates and enthusiasts of the Ontario Science Centre know better than to have faith in this process, because they have already lived it. And when we're talking about our community spaces, we want transparency and we want accountability. And the Infrastructure Ontario process and the management. I mean, a lot of those reports that the folks at Ontario Place, not the Science Centre, but that they have put their reports to the government, and they've been sitting there for years. And the government is not big on transparency, and so this is a concern. And I'll mention this is the second bill that kind of deals with the real estate management portfolio, right? I think it was Bill 69 that dealt with it before, and we see the change in location of the WSIB building, right? We see merging of spaces, office spaces, and people are worried that they're going to have to travel farther to get access to the WSIB, for example. So we're watching and waiting, and we're not getting great feedback, but it's too early. It's too early to know.
And Jennifer, last quick question for you here. What changes would you like to see to the bill to make yourself more comfortable, other advocates more comfortable with what it's proposing?
It's an interesting question, because it isn't a matter of amending it. It's a small bill. It's just, we'd like to know what it's really for. So what it puts out, or what it is setting out to do, is pretty simple. So it isn't even a matter of fine tuning or tightening up what's in the bill. It's, why is this bill here? And so I guess when we know as well from what the government had told us in a briefing, that there will be another piece of legislation coming forward to look at other properties. So we watch, we wait, and when we hear back from more of the stakeholders who will be directly impacted, then we'll take it from there. But we know that the relocation of the Ontario Science Centre is highly problematic and highly suspect, and that and the Ontario Place redevelopment both being investigated by Ontario's Auditor General as it is, right? So there are a lot of questions around anything the government is doing with the Ontario Science Centre and Ontario Place. So this is more in that story.
Okay, and that story does continue. Jennifer French, again, NDP, MPP for Oshawa, and infrastructure critic as well for the province. Thank you.
Thank you.